people have different preferences how they move around the world, right? And I think there you can imagine the downsides and the upsides, but just from your personal preference, as far as I know, what makes a train cool for you? Why do you like trains?
I like trains because I think you can get very fast and relatively cheap anywhere you want. I think there are a lot of issues at the moment, but they can be solved, I think. And I'll give you an example. When I was younger, I went to Venice in a night train. So I hopped on the train, I slept, and then I woke up in Venice. I mean, how cool is that? I think that sounds much more glamorous than just waiting in a security line at the airport.
It does, actually. And where did you start? In Germany here?
Yes, in Munich, actually.
In Munich. So you go to a train, you have the normal process of buying a ticket, going to the train, and then it drives during the night. And
Exactly.
that's not a new thing, right? But
It's not a new thing, but it's kind of an old thing, but it's new again. So the rail companies in Europe, a lot of rail companies, they're starting again to produce and or reuse the rolling stock of the night trains. And this is a very recent development, I would say, like maybe the last 3-4 years. It's growing. The number of night trains in Europe are growing on a very, very fast pace. So you can see them everywhere now.
I mean, that sounds good there for many reasons, because most people, and I can imagine that's actually the case, when you're riding by train at night, you don't have as many trains as during the daytime. Is that a reason why it goes more smoothly, or?
Yeah, definitely. And it's cheaper also, the tracks, using the tracks at night.
Why is that?
Because it's not the busy hour.
So again, same, like you don't have, you just have less trains.
You have less trains, yeah. But also it's slower. It's not a high-speed train.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter because it's at night. You sleep, so you wake up. And you are fresh, and you get up in Venice.
Do they have showers on these trains?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
It depends. Really, the ÖBB, the Austrian Railway, they're doing pretty good with this topic. They're making really new rolling stock, new, very innovative night train.
And I have a bed on this train.
Yes.
So that's something I don't have in a car, for example. I don't have a skateboard on a scooter, and not even on an airplane, unless I have, even if I have a lot of money, and I don't own unless I don't own the airplane, I don't have a bed in most cases. Even on first class nowadays, you don't have a real bed.
I think the golden era of air travel is over, kind of, if you have enough money.
I mean, we're sitting here in an old...
Yeah.
It's history by itself, I guess. So.
Yeah, but it's more affordable for everyone at the moment. It's not just for rich people. Everyone can now travel by plane. You have to pay extra for having first class or business class to have a little bit comfort. But I think a night train, you can have very much comfort in a night train already.
Interesting. I also maybe want to get the 2 cents of you for the thoughts on restrictions and the freedom you have on a railway. And actually, I can give you an example where I thought it's actually quite restricted from my perspective. Because when me personally, I think like on a railway, you can't, right? In a car, I can at least as much as possible, and the streets give you opportunity to do so, move. On a railway, it's how the railway goes. There's no way to move, there's no way around, it's the railway. So it felt for me quite restricted, but there could be also a lot of freedom. For example, when I think of like huge cities, and I think that's the future where we're heading towards, more like mega cities and stuff, you don't have traffic when you go on the subway. So in New York City, which is not a very it's a futuristic city, but it's quite an old city, you have these old subways, and they work tremendously amazing good, because you're not stuck in traffic, so you have kind of more freedom until the point you kind of get stuck in the underground, and you kind of have to wait until and you cannot really get in a car. I could at least, hopefully not in an accident, but in a traffic jam, I mean, technically I could at least leave officially.
And in New York, they should heavily invest in the subway because it got really old.
Okay, is that an issue?
It is an issue, yeah, obviously, because it's a very old infrastructure.
Okay.
But talking about I know there's like more freedom with the car. You can just take the...
I'm not sure if it is, but yeah.
And that is true, definitely. For a train, for obvious reason, you have to switch to another train if you want to. But let's be honest, between the big cities there, you use the Autobahn. So you just use the same street as well as for the cars.
Fair point.
And a car is pretty slow. I mean, in theory, it can drive up to 300 kilometers if you want, if you have a good car. But I mean, in general, I think you drive like 100 kilometers per hour in average.
Yeah.
With a train, you can drive with 300 kilometers. So this is much more faster.
Is that the average though?
No, this is not the average.
150, I guess, or something. So a little higher than cars, probably.
Yeah, I mean, if you use high-speed trains, and if you take a good example, like in Japan or in some parts of China, this is pretty fast. And I would say it's the average speed. I know with Deutsche Bahn we have issues, and it's not everywhere. The train can't be that fast in all of the tracks because they are not allowed to. But in an optimal setting, this would be possible. So you can go from Stuttgart to Paris in, I think, 3 hours.
You can?
Yes.
Nice, okay. But for yourself, you still enjoy cars and airplanes and scooters or skateboards or any kind of other means of transportation?
I do actually, yeah. For example, I have an electric scooter.
Okay.
Like, I like to use these things, and I take also the plane when I have to, but I try not to. I try to use for example, for work, I can work in the ICE, in the train. In the plane, it's very hard to work because you can't use your laptop when you start, most of the time you can't use your laptop because you have to store them in somewhere. Then you have to wait in security. I know for business class it might be a little bit faster and easier with the lounge and stuff, but it's hard. And also, the airport most of the times is far away from the city.
That's true. I mean, further out, like more in the outskirts. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the connection Stuttgart to Munich, I had a work-related business trip there, and some colleagues of mine were traveling by plane from Stuttgart to Munich, and I was traveling by train, and guess who was way faster because I just got out in the center of Munich. I could walk to the office, and then that's it. And my colleagues, they had to fly to the airport in Munich, then had to get from the airport to the city center, and it's much more stressful in the end.
I see, but you still see that there's use cases for all means of transportation. Yeah. As with your example of your scooter, like somewhere you need to bridge gaps, right? And that's also what your study kind of aims at. There's gaps, right?
Yeah.
I mean, your study goes about train infrastructure, so again, back just to railways. Correct. But it's pretty rare, actually, that you have borders between European countries and they're well connected via train infrastructure. Yeah. So how do these cases usually look like? Like, do you have to go by bus or in between the trains? So I get my train, go all the way to the border of a country, and yes, how do I move?
Sometimes it's the case, actually. So sometimes for a lot of kilometers, for hundreds of kilometers, there's not even one train connection. And so even if there's very populated areas, for example, if there are two big cities and there's no train connection, so people sometimes have to take the train to the border and they'll take the bus to cross the border. And that should not be the case. I mean, but to the modes of transport, I think every mode of transport has the right to be there. I mean, I have a brother in the United States, and I will not take a train or a ship to go there. Obviously, the plane is the best way to go. But I think inside Europe, there could be more high-speed trains, and it could be, I think a lot of plane connections or air connections are not necessary.
The missing links I have between the European countries, is that also related to the, sometimes specifically in Germany, a lot of delays and outrages of trains? Is that related? Is that maybe the pinholes of because of the few border connections you have and these trains make it all stuck?
I think the problem with the missing links is more like an infrastructure problem. So there were in former times tracks, but not anymore. Okay. I think most of the times these kinds of connections, to be honest, they don't serve for, I think they would not be used for high-speed trains. This is more like connecting the border areas in Europe, even with such a really small connection.
But they would have been, they need to be redone or something to be used.
Reconnected or reestablished. Sometimes they even exist, but they're abandoned. Sometimes they're interrupted, sometimes they're really are connections, but they're abandoned. So you have to.
All of this would be solved with the general mobility of us that much better within Europe. I mean, because the countries themselves have like a lot of data and connectivity issues which make most of the outrages of the trains, right? And the delays.
Yeah.
Not because of the interconnectivity between the railway structure of the countries. So me moving slow from, I don't know, Germany to France is not because of the connection between Germany and France, but the trains have delays and outrages within Germany.
That's correct. That's another issue. That's right. So this is, but talking just about infrastructure, I think it should be, as it should be there. There should be, I mean, this is just the base, just having the infrastructure. Without an infrastructure, you can't even plan a good service.
The same goes for space travel, and I think they're trying to build infrastructure for going on the moon, for example, or into the space, and having that infrastructure on place at some point that could be used for certain business models from there on. Same with the internet, right? A lot of startups nowadays are pretty much using the infrastructure of internet, not even thinking that much that it's just there.
Exactly.
And we want to have the same infrastructure for trains to be, at least within Europe, be way better built and have just a baseline of infrastructure to then build on that and having faster connection within these countries and in between these countries.
And then there's also like we have the difference between high-speed trains and more regional trains and stuff like that. Because for the high-speed trains, the really important corridors, they are tackled in the 10T, the Trans-European Train Network. Oh. So until 2030, they want to complete, like, I think it's 9 corridors with high-speed connectivity. But there's also the comprehensive network. They want to finish it by 2030, and then they want to connect all the region in Europe with the core network.
Oh, okay.
So this is an important development, and maybe it has good sides. But I think we have to also think about the smaller connection, not just high-speed connection, not just connecting the biggest cities or the biggest economic hubs, but also to enable the collaboration in the European border areas.
But you always end up with, like, for example, the missing links you connect with a car or with a scooter or maybe sometimes with an airplane. But
there are also kinds of missing links. But the infrastructure, from an infrastructural perspective, the missing links would be just an interrupted rail track.
If I live in a small town and I want to use the train, I probably need a car first.
That's true.
Unfortunately, but because otherwise I would need to build more infrastructure.
Yeah, sure. You need the last mile, and that's a very important issue.
Last mile, okay. And that's something you could do with a scooter, car, or not that much else, actually.
But I would never say that, like, at the moment, you can't go by train everywhere you want. You need cars. In a lot of places, you need cars. It's not even possible. If you have 2 connections a day, you can't really rely on that, because then you need the car. But in an optimal world, it would be easier to use public transport, maybe.
You just need a general or better interoperability between all of these means of transportation.
That's right. For example, people sometimes don't want to be in traffic jams inside the city centers, right? So they go with their car to the outskirts of the cities. There maybe is a charging station or parking lot, a cheap parking lot. And there is also the train. Maybe there are more trains at 8 o'clock in the morning and at 5 or 6 o'clock in the p.m. at night, because there's a lot of commuters and stuff like that. So this would be, for example, a good example for interoperability between cars and.
And that's exactly where you like the paper you did was only on train infrastructure, as you mentioned, right? But you mentioned, I think it could be a base for exactly what we just talked about, the interoperability between these means of transportation, and what kind of data you think needs to be added for the whole connectivity between these means of transportation.
So if we want to have a bigger picture of all the infrastructure, obviously we have to put roads in there. And also maybe connections, on water bodies like ships or even air travel. We have to put very critical infrastructure like airports, also where the nearest airports, for example.
And maybe also like think of there's certain borders which, I mean, within Europe, I guess you would not even come up with any crossings of borders and infrastructures, because on airplanes they probably, I mean, they have their routes, I guess, they need to take.
Yes.
So probably you always have some ways to go.
That's right. So you can't, they're not really mapped in that.
Okay.
I mean, they are, I think.
But roads I could map, right?
Yes.
Something we could add. And having that full picture, how could we actually use it to get a better connectivity within all of these means of transportation or kind of mobility for us?
For example, yeah, we have to have a connection between the modes of transport. Let's say the old Berlin airport, Tegel, there was no train connection.
Towards that airport?
Yeah. So you got out, you had to take a bus. And I think for people like coming from other countries, and it was kind of confusing. In other airports, you get down, there's the train already waiting for you. You get to the city center. Yeah, it's easy. It should be easy. Mobility should be easy.
Yeah, no, I think it's... yeah.
Yeah, do an ending part, please.
An ending? Ooh.
So, Peter, give a for this.
An ending, really? I mean, I was not even sure if someone uses that footage. I was just continue asking questions because I was...
a little nice chatting. Well, it was a pleasure to be here. It was very nice. Thank you.
Being with us on Talking Mobility was good for you?
It was very nice, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for these additional insights, Peter. And for everyone else who watched this short making of or like short after interview with Peter, you can also watch the full episode number 4 with actually David as a host and the whole interview with Peter. Check the link below this video, and also you can find there our LinkedIn profiles, the LinkedIn profile of David, who is the host of episode 4, the LinkedIn profile of Peter, and ask him more questions as I just did, or if you want to contact me, you can also do that. Thanks for everyone watching, and see you next time.